Hello, Sauce here. This is a video lesson on dot plot. We have a set of data. This is numerical data, and we want to graph this as a way of visualizing this information. This data is, we could imagine, it came from asking 16 different people how many hours per week do they play video games. And if you'd seen a previous lesson on bar graphs and histograms, this is the same set of data. We have the same numbers here. But we're going to visualize it by graphing it in a different way. For a dot plot, we're not going to put the numerical information into categories. A dot plot does not need categories. Instead, we start with a number line. This time I'm going to use a ruler to make a number line. And when we graph, we're going to make tick marks and label those tick marks. It's best to look at the information that we're going to graph before we decide what our tick marks are going to be and choose one on the left to be our lowest. And then very far on the right, we'll make a tick mark where we'll put our highest value. I can see that it's 50 in this data. Now that we have our lowest and highest point that we're guaranteed to use, we know that everything else is going to be in between these two choices. So we won't run into trouble later trying to plot stuff that's off the page. I'm going to make a few more tick marks to reference here, right in the middle. I'm going to label 25, which is precisely in between 0 and 50. And I think I could make use of a tick mark at 5 and 10, 15, and 20, approximately there. Now that I have my number line ready, I put the information, the data, onto the number line by representing each response with a dot. So if I have a response of 2, that's approximately here on my number line, I'm going to represent the response of 2 with a filled in dot above the line. And it's customary to keep track that if we've already graphed that data, then I'll cross it out lightly. I'm going to plot my zeros. I have 3 of them, so I'll cross 3 of them off there, and I'll represent 3 responses of 0 with 3 dots above where 0 is represented on the number line. Now I don't have to go from low to high. I can see that I have 14 repeated, so I'm going to choose those to be graphed next. 14 is just below 15 on my number line, and I will graph them 2 responses, 2 dots on top of each other. Next I'm going to graph the 50 because it's the highest one I've got, and then another high number 40. I'm going to approximate where 40 is. I could use a ruler to be very precise, but that is approximately 40. Now I have 1 response at 40. Now let's clean up the rest of this. Oh, there's a 20 there, and 20 I have a tick mark at. 6 and 7 represented twice. 2 dots at 7. I've got a 10. This tick mark is 10. A 3. This was a 2. So a 3 is going to be right beside it. And 12 is my last one. This is a 10. These are 14s. 12 is going to be in between. Now, I have to check to see if I'm complete or left anything off. The way to check is, did I use every number because I crossed them off? Looks like it. And I can check again. If I had 16 numbers to plot, then I should have a total of 16 dots on my dot plot. 1, 2, 3. I counted 15. Let me try again. 15. So I've discovered that I left one off. I need to check. I'm going to go back to my 3-0 responses and cross them off again. I've got a response of 2 and 3, a response of 6, 7 twice, and I've found the number that I left off. I found it, it's a 4, and a 4 needs to go there. Again, I'm glad when I make mistakes because then I get to show you how to check and find them and correct for them. I've completed my dot plot. I like a dot plot because I don't have to fit the numbers into categories first. A dot plot is representing the original numbers and has in it the original data that you might have collected in your experiment. But there's a drawback to the dot plot. When your data includes numbers that's very different than most of the rest, like the 40 and 50 out here, then the dot plot has to be extended quite a bit. And a lot of the data tends to crunch up in one area in order to make room for those numbers that are very far off. We might call these outliers because they're very different. But a dot plot is also a visualization. We can see that the majority of people play relatively low number of hours per week video games compared to just a few others that tend to play a lot.